What's up guys, and welcome back to the series where I'm challenging myself to make a song in Logic Pro on the iPad. Today's video is all about guitar production on the iPad. Now, I've been using this iPad Pro to make a song for a few weeks now, and to date my experience has really been a mixed bag. I've really enjoyed drum programming and recording live instrumentation into this thing, for example, but I have really not enjoyed trying to work out arrangements and doing editing on the iPad. However, when it comes to production and dialing in sounds very quickly, I think the iPad does it better than the Mac, and I'll explain why in this video. So just to quickly recap the challenge that I set myself in the first video in this series, link up here if you haven't watched that video yet. Maybe watch parts 1 and 2 first and then come back here for part 3. Apple recently released Logic Pro for the iPad, completely out of the blue, and since I'm a complete newbie to the iPad, i.e. I've never owned one before, I thought I'd go out and buy one and set myself a challenge of making a song from start to finish. So record, produce and mix in 30 days on an iPad. Side note, I'm now using a refurbished M1 iPad Pro, and if you want to know why I've switched to this iPad in particular, here's a link to that video. The objective of this whole challenge is to release this song that I'm making as my next single, so it kinda has to sound good, and if that wasn't enough, I'll be giving away the Logic file for my new single completely for free in the last video in this series. So if you haven't yet hit that subscribe button, might be worth doing so you don't miss out. And whilst you're down there, it's worth checking that the notification bell is turned on so you don't miss the next and final video in this series. Essentially, in that final video, I'll make sure to include a link in the description where you'll be able to put in your email address and download the session for free. You'll be able to open the Logic session on your own Mac or iPad, and you'll be able to view and solo the different tracks, see what plugins I've used to dial in my sounds, look at the channel strip settings, etc. Take it apart and study it, essentially, and see how I put it together. Particularly for those of you that are just getting started with home studio music production, and I'm guessing that if you're watching this video, then you're either already making your own music or you're wanting to start. And I think that this session could end up being quite a nice one for you guys to walk through. And for that very reason, I've decided that for this song, I'm going to be using exclusively stock plugins, i.e. plugins that come with Logic, straight out of the box. The reason for this is that I want the Logic file for this song to work on anyone's MacBook or iPad. I want it to be accessible and open to anybody that would like it. And I also kind of like the idea of setting myself the challenge of making a radio-ready song just using stock plugins. There are so many fantastic third-party alternatives out there, and trust me, I've bought so many over the past years, but do you really need them? I'm not so sure. Okay, so let's briefly recap the progress that I've made today. Just as a side note, I was at Glastonbury Festival a few weeks back, and literally the day that I got back, I fell ill with a virus that seemed to last forever. It just would not budge. So I am a little bit delayed on this challenge, but better late than never, right? Back to the song. I first came up with a few chord progressions that I quite like the sound of, top line vocal melody and also a lyrical concept, which uses the analogy of a poker game to go all in on a relationship with a significant other. I also came up with a programmed drum pattern that I created in Logic's step sequencer, which I found to be an absolute joy to use and so easy on Logic on the iPad. I also came up with some more lead guitar parts, and for all of my guitar sounds, I opted to use the emulated output from my Fender Tone Master amplifier, using my Boss ME80 multi-effects pedal to dial in the sounds and tones that I wanted to use as a bass. Now, I could have used Logic's native amp sims to create these sounds, especially because of their versatile nature, but I found that that can be counterproductive sometimes. Having an endless choice of sounds and tones to choose from can quite often send you into a rabbit hole. So for me, I prefer getting the sound in the room first, coming out of the amplifier, committing to that sound by recording it straight into Logic, and then making any minor adjustments after the fact if needed. For example, if a guitar is lacking some punch and needs some compression, or if it's too dark sounding and needs a high frequency boost, that kind of thing can be done so quickly in Logic on the iPad. Okay, so what ended up being super frustrating last time was trying to arrange the song on the iPad. Moving tracks around and reordering stuff just became so much of a headache that I ended up porting the file from my iPad to my MacBook to work out the arrangement. Since my last update with you guys, I have now worked out an arrangement that I'm really happy with, along with some additional guitar parts as well. So the instrumental is very nearly there and the song is starting to take shape. Now, in terms of producing the song, i.e. the sounds of each of the instruments and vocals and how they all jigsaw together, I like to create the backing track for the song first. I know that other musicians and producers like to work in different ways, but for me personally, I find that producing as I go, so recording a few instruments, getting them to sound the way I want before then going and recording others, helps me to work out the overall vibe, energy and feel of the song early on, and that sort of initial feeling becomes my North Star for everything else that I then add. So that's kind of how I like to build the song up. I almost always save the vocals for last, although if I have most of the words or melody at this point, like I do here, I'll record a guide vocal, just so I know where I am in the song when I'm adding new layers. So let's take a listen to what the song now sounds like, now that I've added more guitar parts, and then I'll show you how I got there, using just a few simple Logic stock plugins. And more importantly, I'll show you just how easy it is to do this on the iPad.
It's time to make my move, baby child, nothing to say but what's to. I feel like it's time to win or lose, poker style, I've gone all in for this round, no I can't lose, nothing can take me away from you, baby child, and I'd always stay if I had to. Nothing can keep me away from you. Running mine and hide my hand, but it's not something that I can do. Don't you look at me like it's new, baby child. It's hard to have me feeling. I got all five and you know it's true. Poker style, I've gone all in for this round. It's all forever. There's no good in you. Oh, it's all forever. Just hope that you'll be listening to.
On to the really fun stuff. Using plugins to dial in sounds is such a great experience on the iPad. Let's take one of the guitar parts that I've recorded for this new song, and I'll show you how you can dial in a pretty good guitar sound within seconds. To view your plugins in the mix view, it works essentially the same as on the Mac. You can see all of the plugins on each of the channels, and you can click to open each plugin like so. However, this is where the similarities with the Mac end. By clicking this button here, you can enter what Apple is calling the plugin tile view. It's really neat. You can see at a glance all of the plugins on this channel, and they're all in this sort of condensed view where you have easy access to the most commonly used controls for each plugin. You can also click to expand the plugin where you can see the full set of controls, and you can switch between them very, very easily. It's so much faster than on the Mac. One downside of this view is I guess that you can't have multiple plugins open at the same time, but I don't see that as being a massive disadvantage, to be honest. So let's dial in some sounds really quickly. Let's hear a quick before and after on that guitar sound. So hopefully you can tell from the before and after that the guitar is now a bit smoother thanks to the compression, and it also feels a bit bigger and wider now because of the ensemble plugin giving it some modulation. Okay, so for verse 3 of the song, just after the first chorus, I needed some variation in the instrumental. I had an idea that I thought could work. I basically wanted the rhythm guitars to cut out, and I wanted a sustained tremolo distorted guitar effect to come in, and I wanted it to sound really gnarly and to break up almost like a broken record during the sustained notes. I used the Bit Crusher plugin in Logic to achieve this, essentially by increasing and decreasing the resolution setting. Take a listen at how the guitar sound starts to break up when I turn down the resolution setting. So to program this in, I'm actually going to close the plugin and head over to the turn on automation button on the top left of the screen, and where it says volume, I'm going to select the parameter that I want to automate. So I'm going to choose Bit Crusher and resolution. I'm also going to change the mode from read to touch because I want to draw in the automation. I now need to select the brush tool to do this, which is a little bit different than on the Mac. And then this icon here, and now I can draw this in. I want the resolution to be high during the initial plucking of that note, and then close up during the end of the note to kind of break the sound up. So each note breaks up at the end of each bar and starts to sound a bit like a broken record or like something is cutting out. Let's listen to how it sounds isolated. Now let's listen to how it sounds in the song.
Striking panoramic views. The sun rolls up the afternoon. So put your chips back in the room.
So easy and enjoyable to draw that in with the Apple Pencil. Pretty subtle, but I think it's achieving the effect that I want. So I hope you guys are starting to get excited about this, because I am. I think the song is coming together pretty nicely, and hopefully you guys can hear what the finished product is going to sound like. Just the vocals left to do now. Now, as excited as I am about the song, I just can't sign off here without talking about the iPad. Not so much what it can be used for, but what it should be used for. My experience of using this M1 iPad Pro fairly heavily over the past few weeks tells me that for music production, the iPad should be used as an ideas capture tool, not a fully fledged music production workhorse. For me, it's the perfect recording and production device. Whether you're at home or on a train or on a plane, getting an initial idea down on the iPad is just so easy and convenient due to its tactile nature. It just couldn't be easier. It's very much a pick up and play, stress-free experience. It's just the perfect device for putting an initial production together and dialing in sounds very quickly to create an initial blueprint of the song that you're making. But when you eventually get to the stage where you are making those finer adjustments, moving tracks around, fading tracks in, changing the arrangement, rerouting tracks into buses, it's still a much better experience on the Mac for me. It can be done on the iPad, don't get me wrong, but it might just take you twice as long. And with that said, subscribe if you're new, and make sure you have the notification bell turned on, because you do not want to be missing the final few videos in this series. Do look out for the free download of the session in upcoming videos, and if you enjoyed this video, then I'll leave a few links to some of my other videos that you may want to watch next. See you in the next one.